You ever unwrap a present you didn't ask for, didn't want, and certainly didn't expect, but once you see it, it changes your whole damn life? That was me, last September. My 10th wedding anniversary. Double digits. Big milestone. The kind of day you think comes with champagne and candlelight. Maybe one of those overpriced hotel rooms with robes so soft they make you forget you're not rich. Yeah, well, I got a different kind of surprise. Let me back up a bit. My name's Nathan Cole, 38 years old, born and raised in Tennessee, now living in the suburbs of Chicago with a mortgage, a golden retriever named Duke, and, at the time, a wife named Melissa who made pancakes every Sunday and kept our spice rack organized alphabetically. She also had a smile that could knock the wind out of you and a laugh that used to feel like home. Used to. We met in college. Fell in love over late-night study sessions and vending machine dinners. Got married in a chapel with more charm than budget, and we made it work. Through layoffs, miscarriages, career pivots, and her brief obsession with kombucha brewing, we made it. Or so I thought. Now, if you had asked me even a year ago what kind of woman Melissa was, I would have said this without blinking. Loyal. Steady. The kind of woman who made lists for her lists. If I'd had a nickel for every time I said, Melissa would never do something like that, I could have retired early. Bought a boat. Named it Blind Fool, just for the irony. The anniversary day started normal. Too normal. Melissa woke up early, already dressed before I even rolled out of bed. Don't forget, tonight's a surprise, she said with that half-smile she used to give me when she was hiding a birthday cake or planning a date night. We're something nice. I grinned, kissed her cheek, and joked, as long as it doesn't involve you making me salsa dance again, I'm in. She laughed. Said nothing. The day dragged. I tried to work, but my mind kept drifting to what she had planned. I even stopped by the florist on my lunch break to grab her favorite, lilies, always lilies, and rehearse some speech in my head about how I still felt lucky after 10 years. That night, I showed up to the address she texted me, thinking maybe it was a new restaurant. It was a rooftop lounge, fancy place, skyline views, overpriced menu. She waved me over from a private table near the edge. Surprise, she said, eyes twinkling. And for a moment, I really thought she was just being sweet. Maybe we were going to reminisce, talk about how far we'd come, and share dessert like we used to, one fork, 2 bites at a time. But there was a second wine glass already poured, and a third chair pulled out. That's when he showed up. I remember thinking, maybe he's the waiter. Maybe he's bringing a wine list. Maybe he's here to ask us to move tables because someone more important needs the corner with the view. He wasn't. He sat down like he owned the chair, wore a smirk like it came with his suit, and when he reached over and kissed my wife, on the cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world, I felt something shift inside me. Not snap. Not shatter. Just shift. Like tectonic plates. Quiet, invisible, permanent. Melissa didn't flinch. She smiled. That same damn smile she used to reserve for me on Sunday mornings, or when I made her laugh so hard she snorted. Nate, she said, like she was introducing me to her cousin at a barbecue. This is Miles. He's someone I've grown close to. Miles extended a hand across the table. Pleasure, he said. His voice was smooth, like a podcast host who reads his own ad spots. Confident. Casual. Clean-cut. The kind of guy who probably writes emails with the word synergy in them. I didn't shake his hand. Close to? I repeated. My mouth went dry, but my voice didn't crack. Proud of that, honestly. You invited me here to meet the guy you're cheating on me with? Melissa winced, like I'd said something impolite. It's not like that. No. I leaned forward. How is it, then? She took a breath. That calm, patronizing breath women take when they're about to tell you why this is actually your fault. She launched into some carefully rehearsed script about emotional distance and different needs and being on separate paths. She said the word growth a lot, like I was a dying houseplant she forgot to water. And Miles? He just sat there, legs crossed, sipping his wine like he was the supporting actor in a film that wasn't even about him. I looked him in the eye once. Just once. He blinked first. Melissa, I said slowly, quietly, if you wanted to leave me, you could have done that without the audience. She shook her head. I didn't want to hurt you, Nate. Then maybe don't bring me to a rooftop like you're unveiling a new product launch. She said she thought if I met Miles, if I saw them together, it would help me understand. Help me move on. That part actually made me laugh. Not the funny kind. More like the sound a tire makes when it gives out on the highway. I understand just fine, I said, pushing back from the table. You two enjoy your view. I left. Didn't look back. Not once. She didn't call after me. That told me everything. When I got home, the house felt smaller. Like the walls knew. Like the pictures on the mantel were ashamed of me. I took off my shoes and stood in the hallway, not sure what to do with my hands. The lilies were still in the car, so I threw them in the trash. And then, I opened a drawer. Not because I was angry. Because I was awake now. Because I'd seen the truth up close. And I wasn't going to sit in that truth forever. Not quietly. Not like some discarded husband waiting for the paperwork to finish him off. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing. They weren't going to see me coming. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. No alarm. No Duke barking. Just me. Awake. Mind buzzing like a wasp trapped in a jar. You know that moment after a storm when everything feels too calm? That was me. Still. Quiet. And dangerous in ways I hadn't fully processed yet. Melissa hadn't come home. I wasn't surprised. I didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't ask her where she was. Because I already knew. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was certain. And now, I wanted confirmation. The kind you can print. Laminate. Slide across a lawyer's desk. So I did what any freshly betrayed husband with decent Wi-Fi and a coffee addiction would do. I got to work. I started with the email. See, Melissa wasn't the secretive type. She was too organized for that. Her passwords were all variations of the same thing, our anniversary date plus her maiden name. Like I said, predictable. Loyal to a fault. Until she wasn't. 5 minutes in, I was in her inbox. 10 minutes later, I was in a war zone. There were emails. Hundreds of them. Labeled work travel, wellness retreat, client strategy. You know what none of them mentioned? Me. Our marriage. Our life. Our mortgage. But they all mentioned him. Miles. Funny thing about cheaters, they think they're subtle. But the moment I saw an Airbnb receipt from a town 2 hours away dated exactly 2 weeks before our anniversary on the same weekend Melissa claimed she was visiting her sister, I knew. The retreat wasn't exactly spiritual, unless Miles was handing out massages and wine pairings by candlelight. One email said, I loved watching you sleep after. You look so different when you're relaxed. Like you're exactly where you belong. I closed the laptop. It was enough. I didn't rage. Didn't throw anything. Didn't scream at the walls. Instead, I did something uncharacteristic. I smiled. Because if Melissa wanted a clean exit, she picked the wrong man to cross. And if Miles thought I was just going to vanish quietly into the footnotes of their little love story, they had another thing coming. But before I made my move, I needed one last thing. Proof. Not just emails. Footage. I called a buddy of mine from college, Reese. Runs a private security firm now. Owes me a favor from a poker night in '08 when I didn't let him drive home drunk and ruin his career. Reese, I said, I need cameras. Discreet. Motion activated. Night vision optional. He didn't ask questions. Just said, how many? 2 for the house, I said. 1 for her car. Reese whistled low. Yikes. You expecting a break-in? I paused. No, I said. I'm expecting clarity. By that night, the cameras were up. 1 in the hallway by our bedroom. 1 in the living room. 1 in her car under the dash. Clean work. Undetectable. The setup was done. All I had to do was wait. I knew she'd be back. I just needed to let her feel safe again. Let her fall back into routine. Into complacency. Let her think I was licking my wounds in the shadows. Because the best part of revenge is letting them believe you're done while you're still loading the last bullet. Melissa came home 2 days later. Waltzed in like she'd been at a yoga retreat where nobody had cell reception. Hair tied up, sunglasses on indoors, and holding an iced coffee that cost more than my dignity felt in that moment. She tossed her keys into the bowl by the door and greeted Duke like nothing had happened. Hey, bud, she cooed, kneeling to scratch his ears. Did you miss Mommy? I watched from the hallway. She hadn't seen me yet. When she looked up and finally noticed me, there was a pause. The kind you could fill with all the unspoken tension of 100 unresolved arguments. Oh. Hey, she said, casual as a cashier. Didn't expect you home. I just nodded. I live here. She blinked. Right. No apology. No explanation. Not even a weak attempt at damage control. Just. Right. Like this was some co-working space we happened to share. She walked past me, trailing expensive perfume and self-importance. I didn't follow. I just let her be. That was the point. She thought I was past the storm. That I'd taken the high road, maybe even blamed myself. Maybe she thought I'd spend my evenings journaling about our emotional distance while she slipped into silk sheets with her corporate Ken doll. That's what made it so easy. I didn't accuse her. I let her settle back in. She unpacked, cooked dinner like she hadn't just ghosted me on our 10th anniversary. Even asked if I wanted to watch a movie with her like old times. She offered Bridges of Madison County, which was so on the nose I nearly laughed myself into a hernia. Instead, I nodded. Sure. Why not? We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a frozen pizza between us, her foot brushing mine like she wanted to play pretend. I kept my eyes on the screen, heart steady. Because while she watched Meryl Streep cry over Clint Eastwood, I was waiting for the files to upload. See, Reese set me up with a remote sync option. Every recording from the 3 hidden cameras fed straight into a secure folder I could access from my phone. And on Tuesday night, while Melissa was working late, I got what I needed. The footage from her car. At 7:43 p.m., she climbed into the driver's seat wearing a black dress and enough makeup to warrant a warning label. At 7:45, the passenger door opened, and in slid Miles, button down open at the collar, like a man allergic to shame. They didn't speak much. They didn't have to. Melissa reached over and touched his chest like she was pressing play on a playlist only they shared. He leaned in and kissed her. Not a peck. The kind of kiss that says I've done this before. I'll do it again. This belongs to me now. I didn't watch the whole thing. Just enough to know they didn't even wait to get to the hotel. When the video ended, I sat on the back porch with Duke, the cold air biting my skin, and thought about the version of myself that once trusted this woman. That version was gone now. Murdered, politely, by smiles and vague text messages. But his replacement? He had a plan. The next evening, I came home from work a little early. Melissa was in the kitchen, barefoot, singing along to some indie song like she was starring in a commercial for granola bars. I dropped my keys on the counter and said, "Hey, we should have dinner with Miles." She stopped mid-stir, spoon in hand, head tilting slightly like a confused puppy. "What? Dinner?" I repeated. "The 3 of us. Talk things out. Get some clarity. I'm tired of the tension." Her eyes narrowed. "You sure that's a good idea?" "I am," I said. "Text him." She hesitated, then smiled. Not relief, just arrogance dressed in diplomacy. "Okay," she said. "I'll ask." 3 nights later, Miles walked into our house like he'd done it before. That was mistake number 1. I shook his hand. Firm. Not too long. Just enough to let him know the rules had changed. Dinner was polite. Tense, but polite. Melissa tried to guide the conversation like a hostess on a talk show, but the room was heavy with something she couldn't charm her way around. I let them talk. Let them circle the issue. Let them feel like they had the upper hand. Then I stood up and said, "I have something to show you both." Melissa's face fell a little. Miles smiled a smug, wary. "Okay," he said, like a man who thought he was being handed a blessing. I grabbed the remote, turned on the TV, opened the folder, and hit play. The video from the car filled the screen. Melissa's hand on his chest. The kiss. The laughter. The way she whispered something into his ear that made him laugh like a man who just won a bet. Melissa stood up. "Nate, what is this?" "Clarity," I said. Miles said nothing. His face twisted slightly. Less smug now. More corporate panic. Like he was calculating legal exposure in real time. "You filmed me," Melissa hissed. "No," I said. "I filmed my car. That's legal. Yours was just the guest performance." She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. "Don't bother explaining. You already did, on tape." She stepped toward me, a mix of anger and panic brewing in her eyes. "What are you going to do with it?" I looked her in the eyes, smiled, and said, "Whatever I want." Then I handed her a manila envelope from the drawer. Inside, a printed copy of the footage, a notarized affidavit confirming the date and time, and divorce papers with full custody recommendations, financial breakdowns, and a settlement suggestion that made it very clear. I wasn't walking away empty-handed. Neither was she. But Miles? He looked like a man who just realized the stock he invested in was a Ponzi scheme with lipstick. I turned to him and offered the same smirk he'd worn the night I met him. "Don't worry," I said. "You're not the first guy to bet on a bad stock." Miles didn't respond. Just got up, nodded once to no one in particular, and left. Melissa stood there, trembling, paper in hand, mascara trembling at the corners of her eyes. "This is cruel," she said. "No," I replied. "This is fair. You made your choice. I just put it on record." She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. For once, silence did the talking, and I let it speak loud. The house was quiet after Miles left. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. Not the kind where the dog's asleep and the oven's humming and you think, yeah, this is home. No, this was the kind of quiet you get in a courtroom just before the verdict's read. Melissa stood in the kitchen, holding that manila envelope like it might bite her. Her lips moved like she was trying to summon a rebuttal, a defense, anything. But she wasn't used to being caught off script. I sat back down at the dining table, poured myself a glass of water, and took a sip. Slowly, letting her sweat. You really planned all this? She asked finally, her voice brittle. I tilted my head. I didn't plan for you to cheat. That part was all you. She flinched, like I'd flicked her with the truth, and it stung more than she wanted to admit. But the cameras, the recording, the legal work. I planned for the possibility that you weren't who I thought you were, I said. Turns out, I wasn't wrong to prepare. She sat across from me, still clutching the envelope like it held radioactive material. Duke lay at my feet, head resting on my shoe, breathing slow and steady. The only living thing in the room that wasn't tense. Do you really think humiliating me like this helps anything? I raised an eyebrow. Melissa, this isn't humiliation. Humiliation is what you served me on our anniversary, cold. In public, with a garnish of smug. She looked away. I didn't want it to end like this, she muttered. But you didn't want it to stay either, I said. You wanted a way out that didn't make you the villain. A clean pivot. Well, this isn't a Netflix special. You don't get a redemption arc in 30 minutes. She stood and walked to the window, the one that looked out on our backyard, the fire pit we never used, the patio furniture we picked out together, the fading paint on the fence we swore we'd fix last summer. She stared out like it might offer her a memory to hide in. I didn't give her the chance. I'm moving forward with the divorce, I said calmly. The documents are ready. You can contest them if you want, but just know, Miles is in that footage. And if he thinks his career won't take a hit from being Exhibit A in a marriage lawsuit, he's dumber than he looks. Her shoulders dropped. This was supposed to be a conversation, she whispered. Not warfare. No, I said. This was a marriage. You turned it into warfare. I'm just better at logistics. She turned back toward me then, eyes rimmed with that kind of wet fury people get when they've been cornered, not physically, but emotionally. The kind of look a person wears when they realize the mask doesn't fit anymore, and the audience is still watching. You never made me feel seen, she said. You were always so focused on being the good man that you didn't notice I was slipping away. I let that sit. Let her believe, for 1 second, that this was about a feeling, about something subtle and poetic and sad. Then I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice even. Let me guess, you felt disconnected, unheard, a little lonely. So you decided to explore your truth with a man who looks like a cologne ad and uses the phrase emotional bandwidth in meetings. She blinked. That's not fair. No, it's accurate, I said. You wanted out, but you didn't want the guilt. So you outsourced the exit to Miles and figured I'd just accept it. Fade away. I stood up. Slowly. Not with anger, just clarity. Well, here's the part you didn't see coming, Melissa. I did fade away. For a while. I faded into a man you couldn't read anymore. A man who watched, listened, planned. And now, I'm done fading. She said nothing. Just stood there. Still. Small. A quiet little monument to poor decisions. I walked over to the counter, picked up my keys, and paused at the door. I'll be staying with Jordan for a bit, I said. The papers are on the table. Sign them or don't. But this house, this life, it's not yours to dismantle anymore. Her mouth opened slightly. Maybe to ask me to stay. Maybe to plead. Maybe to apologize. But I didn't wait to hear it. Jordan's place was a small townhouse on the other side of town. He greeted me in sweatpants, holding a beer and a confused Labrador that barked like it hadn't decided if I was friend or intruder. Did it happen? He asked, stepping aside. I walked in, dropped my bag by the door, and nodded. Yep. He handed me a cold one. She know you've got the footage backed up? I left that part out, I said. Let her wonder. He grinned. You really went full chess master. No, I said, taking a sip. I went full husband who got tired of playing dumb. We sat on the couch. The game was on. Neither of us watched it. You think she'll fight the settlement? He asked after a while. If she does, I said, she's in for a very public surprise. Jordan nodded. You always were the quiet ones people shouldn't mess with. I smiled. No one ever sees the storm coming from a man who smiles while packing. Back at the house, I knew Melissa would sit at the kitchen table, staring at that envelope, trying to decide whether to burn it, shred it, sign it, or call Miles for advice. But none of that mattered now, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting on her. I had the truth. I had the receipts. And more importantly, I had my dignity, polished, sharpened, and aimed right where it belonged. Miles was a ghost for 2 days. Not a peep. No texts. No let's talk this through. No LinkedIn humble brag updates about navigating complex emotional situations with grace and leadership. Just pure radio silence. Melissa? She texted once. Can we talk about this without lawyers? I didn't reply. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't need to. When you've already read the end of the book, you don't flip back to chapter 4 and ask, hey, maybe the villain was misunderstood. Meanwhile, I stayed at Jordan's, who graciously offered me his spare bedroom, half his fridge, and about 80% of his sympathy. Though, by day 3, he also offered unsolicited dating app advice I didn't ask for. Listen, man, he said, scrolling through someone's profile. This one's a teacher. Probably emotionally mature. Definitely not the cheating with a colleague type. I raised an eyebrow. I've got the ink drying on divorce papers, and you're trying to Tinder me back to emotional stability? Jordan shrugged. Hey, healing's not always about therapy and journaling. Sometimes it's about being liked by strangers who don't know your baggage. Valid point. Still, I wasn't there yet. Not until I tied the last bow on this mess. That morning, I drove back to my office for the first time since the explosion. I work in cybersecurity. Ironically poetic, given that my marriage collapsed because someone else's digital security was a little too relaxed. I parked, grabbed my laptop bag, nodded at the receptionist, and walked into the sleek glass-walled conference room like I owned the place. Because, well, I do. 2 of my senior staff were already waiting. Rachel and Dev, both brilliant, both sharp enough to know something was up. I called this meeting for a reason, and it wasn't quarterly projections. Thanks for coming, I said, sitting down. Today's a little off script. Rachel glanced over. Everything all right? I opened my laptop, projected a folder labeled Disclosures onto the screen, and clicked a video file. The recording of Miles and Melissa began to play. Muted. Just visuals. Just enough. Dev blinked. Wait, is that? Yep, I said. That's Melissa. And the guy? Rachel asked carefully. Miles Carrington, I said. VP of Operations at Greenridge Consulting. Dev frowned. The guy who signed the new multi-year data contract with us? I nodded. Turns out, I said calmly, he's also been conducting extracurricular activities with my soon-to-be ex-wife. On company retreats. Using his company car. On company time. Silence. I let it simmer. Now, I'm not here for pity, I said. But I am here because we're 5 days away from announcing our joint cybersecurity project with Greenridge. And when a man who signs off on data integrity can't even keep his zipper integrity in check, I get nervous. Rachel crossed her arms. Are you planning to go public? No, I said. That would be petty. I'm not here to destroy reputations. I'm here to protect my company. If Greenridge has that man leading strategy, and that man's judgment includes making out with clients' wives in their vehicles, then I want it in writing, right now, that we're dealing with someone else, or we walk. Dev whistled. You want to make them choose. I leaned back. They already did. I'm just holding up the mirror. 3 hours later, I was on a Zoom call with Greenridge's legal team and their CEO. I didn't show the footage. Just laid out the situation. Calm. Clean. Clinical. This isn't a threat, I said. It's a courtesy. I'm not pressing charges. I'm not leaking this to the media. But we cannot continue if Miles is involved. The CEO was pale by the end of the call. Understood, he said tightly. You'll have a new point of contact by tomorrow. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Miles. Well played. You're a real piece of work. I stared at it for a moment. Then typed. Me. No. You're the piece. I just know how to move it. A few days later, Melissa finally signed the divorce papers. No lawyers. No fight. Just a quiet drop-off through her friend Lydia, who handed me the envelope like it was a ransom note she didn't want fingerprints on. I'm sorry, Lydia said quietly. Not your apology to make, I replied. She nodded. She's not herself lately. I looked at her. Really looked. No, I said. She is herself. I just never saw it. And that's the worst part of betrayal. Not the sting, not the lies. It's the slow realization that the person you defended, cherished, and trusted didn't change. They just stopped pretending. I returned home 2 days later. Not for good. Just to grab a few things. The house was quiet again. Same walls. Same furniture. But the silence had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was hollow. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, and packed up the essentials. Took my cufflinks. My college hoodie. Left behind the anniversary album she'd once spent a week scrapbooking. She probably thought it would mean something now. It didn't. Before I left, I took one last walk through the living room. Duke followed. His tail wagged once, uncertain. I kneeled. You ready for a new chapter, bud? He licked my hand. Good enough. We left together. Melissa called me once more after that. Voicemail. Her voice sounded tired. Like regret wore the same dress 3 days in a row and finally realized it didn't fit. Nate. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for what happened, though I am. But for taking your silence as weakness. It wasn't. It was terrifying. You were always the stronger one. And I didn't see it until I watched you walk away. I deleted the message. Didn't save it. Didn't need it. I already had closure. A funny thing happens after the dust settles. People stop asking what happened and start asking how you're doing. And they don't want the real answer. They want a rehearsed line. Something neat. Something non-threatening. I'm doing better. Taking it day by day. Grateful for the growth. The truth? It's messy. The truth is, rebuilding yourself after betrayal feels like waking up in someone else's skin. You keep reaching for things that aren't there anymore. Routines. Conversations. Trust. I didn't miss Melissa, not really. What I missed was the life I thought I had. The illusion of stability. The comfort of being able to say, I know who I am and who loves me. But it turns out, I didn't know either. Not really. So I started over. Slowly. Carefully. Jordan and I split rent for a couple months while I found a new place. Something smaller. Simpler. No memories sewn into the carpet. Just clean walls and open air. I bought new furniture. Threw away anything she had picked out. Even gave away the coffee machine she swore by. Turns out, I like French press better anyway. I spent more time walking Duke. Started cooking. Read books I'd been putting off for years. And one day, I realized I hadn't thought about her in 3 full hours. Progress. I was on my 2nd week in the new place when she knocked on my door. Melissa. Unannounced. No warning. Just standing there in jeans and a sweatshirt, like she'd come to borrow sugar and accidentally tripped over her past. I didn't let her in. What do you want? I asked. She hesitated, arms folded like she was shielding herself from her own reflection. I just wanted to talk, she said. I thought maybe. No, I cut in gently. You thought maybe I'd let you. She blinked, surprised by the calm in my voice. The absence of anger seemed to rattle her more than shouting ever could. You're not mad. I shook my head. Melissa, I was never mad. Just disappointed. And done. She nodded. Her eyes dropped to the floor. He left. Miles. I asked, feigning surprise. The man who pursued a married woman then ran when her life became real? You don't say. She looked up sharply, guilt flooding her expression. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. And now you're just dealing with the consequence. That's not a mistake. That's math. She looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she stepped back. I'll go. Good idea. She turned, walked away. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. Just walked. And I shut the door. This time for good. Months passed. The world spun. Seasons changed. Life got quiet. One night, I was sorting mail when I saw her handwriting on an envelope. Neat. Familiar. Like a ghost signing its name in cursive. I opened it. It wasn't a plea. Or a pitch to start again. Just a letter. A short one. Nate. I've told myself a lot of stories about who we were. About who I was. And none of them feel good anymore. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know I see it now. You were solid. Quiet strength. The kind of man people take for granted until they're standing alone in the ruins of their own choices. I hope your life is full of peace. You earned it. Melissa. I read it once. Then tossed it in the drawer. Not because I needed to keep it, but because I didn't need to throw it away. A year later, I was back on my feet. Not just functioning. Thriving. My company doubled in size. Greenridge replaced Miles and, in a poetic twist, asked if I'd be interested in consulting on restructuring. I declined. Nicely. I traveled a bit. Spent a week hiking in Montana. Breathed air that hadn't been filtered through 4 walls of unresolved tension. Duke still sat by the door every morning like a furry sentry, reminding me that loyalty doesn't always speak, it waits. And me? I didn't become bitter. Didn't swear off love. Didn't tattoo trust no one across my chest. I just learned that strength isn't about how loud you yell. It's about how calmly you walk away when someone bets against your worth and loses. I got betrayed. I got blindsided. But I didn't break. Because the truth is, the people who lie to your face always think they're the smart ones. Until the day they realize they were sitting across from someone who already knew and chose silence not out of weakness, but as a warning.